Hello, I'm Frances Wilson. I'm a pianist, piano teacher and writer and blogger on classical music and piano playing as the Cross-Eyed Pianist. And I'm here today to talk about practicing and how we can make our practicing productive and, more importantly, enjoyable. We all know the expression, practice makes perfect. But I'd like to talk more about how to make practice productive, especially if you have limited time. Knowing how to practice productively is actually a key skill for any musician. And for those of us who don't have much time to practice, knowing what needs to be practiced when and how is incredibly important. Many of us think that professional musicians spend hours and hours in the practice room, but in fact most only do about 4 or 5 hours a day, and that in itself is broken into sections. But they know how to practice efficiently, and we can learn from their techniques in order to help us practice intelligently and effectively. One of my favourite expressions as a teacher is less is more. And what I mean by this is that if you know how to practice and you know what needs to be practiced, you can get an awful lot done in as little as 10 minutes. And I'm going to offer a few suggestions about how to do this. My first suggestion is don't try and do everything in a single practice session. Know which sections need the most work. Maybe your teacher has advised you what needs to be done, and you can take those sections out and do them first. Always put them in at the beginning of your practice session when your mind and fingers are fresh. This might be a chord progression or a scale passage or an arpeggio. Work on these sections separately. You may need only to do as little as 10 minutes, but you can get an awful lot done in that time if you are practicing intelligently. Write notes on what you've achieved and reflect on what you've heard and what you've played. You can go back over these notes and reflections at a later point and incorporate these into your next practice session. Never practice mindlessly, always practice with thought and attention. You might need to practice a section hand separately or simply practice an accompaniment, but always do so intelligently and thoughtfully, and listen as you play and reflect on what you've heard. Did you like that section? Was there something about it that you would like to change or adjust, or were you happy with it? Can you repeat it at a later date with the same dynamics or tempo or articulation? Always treat errors and slips as a learning opportunity and reflect on why they might have happened and how you can approach them differently next time and put them right. Recording yourself is an incredibly effective practice tool, and an instrument such as this allows you to do that and to listen back to your playing and think about what you've heard and how you might like to adjust your playing and your practicing at a future practice session. I'm just going to demonstrate this function now. When you listen back to a section that you've recorded, listen with a positive outlook. Don't listen for mistakes, but listen out for the things that you like. And if it helps, write them down in a practice notebook or perhaps on a pad that you keep next to the piano. And you can then reflect on these things and incorporate them into your practice. When you listen to a recording that you've made, listen with a positive outlook. Don't listen for mistakes or slips, but rather for the details that you think are really lovely. For example, fluctuations in tempo, tempo rubato, dynamics, articulation, details like that which help to bring the music to life. You might like to make a note of these details so that you have a record for your next practice session. This kind of self-critique in practicing is incredibly useful. As pianists, we spend a lot of time on our own practicing, and we need this kind of encouragement to inspire us at our next practice session. I hope you've enjoyed this short video tutorial. In my next session, I'm going to talk about technique and how technique should always serve the music that we play.